3 years ago, Honda satisfied your craving for forbidden fruit when they finally brought over the hottest Civic, the Type R, to America back in 2017. Now, since then, Honda has gone and sold over 13,000 of these here in the United States to mostly millennial buyers. Now, since then, the hot hatch segment has been heating up with new competitors from Hyundai, from Volkswagen, of course. And today, Honda has loaned me the latest Type R version for testing the 2020 model. Updated with new styling, front and rear, a slightly new interior, and Honda's latest Honda Sensing Active Safety Tech as standard equipment for the 2020 model year. So the question I want answered, has Honda made enough changes to the 2020 Type R in order to maintain its status as the king of hot hatches? That's what we're here to find out. So when you claim that you are the king of hot hatches, it can be a little bit difficult to convince other people when one of the biggest problems with the 2017 to 19 Type R was the sound. Now, of course, Honda wanted to address that, and one of the first things they changed this year was the addition of an active sound control. It's linked to the drive modes, and basically just like the Civic Si that I drove earlier this year, it enhances the engine's growl through the audio system. So I have it in Plus R mode right now. We'll talk about what I think of the sound later on in the video. Unfortunately, the first Type R, or the 17 to 19 Type R, still kind of had an exhaust system that sounded like a vacuum cleaner. Has Honda fixed it this year? No, sadly they have not fixed it. I was hoping they would add some kind of crackles and pops to match the triple exhaust system in this car, but the intake induction noise does sound like a huge improvement, so we'll show you a little bit more of that later on in the video. This is a Type R, so I want to talk about the powertrain in this thing. So not much has changed underneath the hood of the latest 2020 Civic Type R, and honestly it didn't need to change because this engine is one of the most potent engines in the hot hatch segment. It's the company's 2-liter K-Series turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder. It's a VTEC engine with a turbocharger, which pumps the engine up with 23.6 pounds of boost pressure. So this is the most powerful production turbo 4-cylinder engine that Honda has ever done. It makes 306 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Now, most of you guys will know those numbers are kind of underrated. Civic Type Rs have been pushing out, over 300 horsepower at the wheels ever since this car came out, and with a simple tune, you can easily push this over 340, 350 horsepower. Now, Honda says 0 to 60 is around the mid 5-second range. It still only goes out through a 6-speed manual transmission. There's no dual clutch, there's no automatic available, and the Type R continues to use a mechanical limited slip differential and a special dual axis front suspension, which helps to quell the torque steer, which we'll talk about later on in the test drive. Fuel economy is also not bad. It's rated at 22 in the city, 28 on the highway. Now, my camera guy who's holding the camera right now actually owns a 2017 model. He's had it for around 3 years now, and he says he will easily get over 33 mpg on the highway. So this gets very good gas mileage, and it actually doesn't require premium gas. It's only recommended for performance, but with a 13-gallon gas tank, you may as well put premium gas in it. As the Type R sits, it weighs just over 3,000 pounds.
No towing?
Yes, you can tow with your Type R. You can tow 0. Now, I never thought that the Type R needed more power, so for 2020, Honda didn't need to add any more, and this is still one of the most potent hot hatches you're going to find in the market. And it really shows you how lackluster the Civic Si is when you just drive the Type R. Now, this thing still has the looks that take you back. It makes me feel like I'm a kid all over again, especially with the design of this thing. So for 2020, Honda pretty much kept things as is. Okay, so the styling changes that Honda made for 2020 are so subtle. It's probably the most subtle you're gonna see on a refreshed model. So just help us see the changes that Honda has made, I've brought along another Type R, the older one, a 2018 model. In fact, this happens to be the same car that you saw in a lot of my videos in the background that's parked in my driveway. It belongs to my friend Peace. So Peace, if you're watching this, you can come and get your car after this video now. But getting back to the 2020 Type R, let's take a look at some of the differences now that we have the two cars side by side. Now, if you're looking at them from this angle, it's pretty hard to see the differences between the two cars. Honda made very little changes to the 20, frankly, because there wasn't really much that needed to be changed on the old 2017 to 2019 model. The big thing you're gonna notice right away when you look at the front bumpers, they've added this new body colored trim piece here that breaks up what used to be a fake vent here that had those mesh grille inserts. As you can see here on the old one, it's all just a mesh fake grille insert right here, which I never really liked the way this looked, so I'm happy to see that Honda has gotten rid of the fake look and they added this little trim piece to kind of break it up. The grille also has been slightly changed. You can see here on the 2020 model, there is no longer an opening that's here on the top portion of the black painted bar, versus on the 2018 model, there's this little piece here, which is interesting because Honda says that they improved the cooling on the 2020 model, because one of the problems with the 18 model or the old one is that they would tend to overheat on the track if owners really pushed it hard. This new one here has a larger grille opening at the bottom here, a little bit of a larger grille opening here, and they also made the red Honda emblem there a little bit smaller this year because it does house the radar sensor. Honda Sensing is standard this year, which means this car now has adaptive cruise control. Looking at the hoods, looks like the hood scoop is in the same position. They're still very much the same. It is a functional hood scoop. Of course, it helps with cooling the engine a little bit more. Honda basically says this new one will be able to keep a temperature that's around 18 degrees Fahrenheit cooler on the track in the same conditions if you're going to track the old model. Personally, I still think the Type R is a good looking car. You have full LED headlights, LED turn signals, daytime running lights, and fog lights is standard. So the Type R has aged very well. They didn't really need to make changes to the vehicle for 2020, but they made very subtle ones. Now, looking at the side profile, you can see the wheels are exactly the same. That's kind of where I wish Honda had updated the wheels. I mean, it's a good looking wheel, but what if you don't want a black finish? So I was kind of hoping that Honda would change the way the wheel looks. What is very different is the brakes. The rotors on the 2020 model have been upgraded. These are now a two-piece rotor. They're a larger design. They're no longer cross-drilled, which is interesting. I would think that that would actually ruin the cooling, but Honda says these are much better on the track because they have better cooling. They're also 2.5 pounds lighter on each corner versus the previous generations or the pre-refreshed models brakes, and they're a little bit larger. Same 4-piston Brembo rotors at the front, red painted caliper at the back. It looks fairly nice, and I really like the way this whole setup looks, especially with the rally red exterior color. Now, remember, Honda also added a new color for 2020. It's called Boost Blue, and they got rid of the Aegean Blue Pearl that's parked right behind me. So I was kind of hoping that Honda would send me the Boost Blue, but the Boost Blue is kind of similar to what you see on like a Focus RS on that nitrous blue. It's a very bright sky blue, and it would have been a really nice addition. Another new thing they added this year, there's now turn signals, integrated turn signals in the side mirrors. These are also a heated mirror, which is also very nice. It kind of modernizes the look. Still no sunroof. I wish Honda would offer a sunroof. I also kind of wish they would offer a black painted roof. I think it'd be a really nice thing to kind of break up some of the body panels on this car, because as you know, the Type R is a very busy looking design, and some of you still don't like it. It's a little bit boy racer. I actually think it is really aged well. I think that the Type R or the Civic hatchback looks very naked without this big wing, which again, they haven't changed that. Now in Europe, they offer a Type R Sport line with a low wing and a different look on the interior. Here in America, we really like the big wing, so Honda is not bringing that here. What you will find is a Type R limited edition, which is painted in Phoenix yellow. That's new for 2021. There's only 600 of those. It'll also have a different Brembo wheel. That one's a completely different review, and Honda hasn't announced pricing on that yet. Now at the back, you can see, compared to the 2018 model that's parked side by side, they look identical. The taillights are the same. They didn't make any changes there. What is slightly different is the bumper. You also have that same body colored trim piece here that kind of breaks up this fake vent. Although I wish they'd gotten rid of this fake mesh insert here like they did at the front of the vehicle. The triple exhaust is still here. Honda didn't make any changes to the exhaust sound of the Type R, which I complained about being weak, but they did add an active sound enhancer in the cabin, which we'll go into the driving scene later and we'll talk about what that sounds like. Now, this is still a Civic hatch, so it's a very practical car, and you get around 26 cubic feet of space with the seats up. Fold down everything, you get around 45 cubic feet of space. So as your only daily driver, the Type R still very much makes sense. Now, personally, I love the Boy Racer looks. I'm a little sad that they didn't send me over a Boost Blue Type R. That's the one that I was really looking to see in person, but this Rally Red is also a nice color choice for this vehicle. The interior also that I'm sitting in is only in red. It looks really good when it's paired with this red exterior, and just like the exterior, there are very little changes for 2020. Just like on the outside, the inside of the 2020 Type R has the most subtle of changes. First things first, let me get inside and shut the door. It has a relatively solid sounding thunk that I heard 3 years ago. It sounds the same. Starting the vehicle up. The Type R is based off of the Touring trim, so technically it has all of the bells and whistles that you find in the Civic lineup. And what they added this year is the Honda sensing technology. So you have their full suite of active safety tech, which is weird to see in a Type R because you can see here they added the lane keep assist button here, the adaptive cruise control button over there, and you have new buttons or new displays there in the instrument panel to show the adaptive cruise control and the lane keep assist. So I'm not entirely sure Type R owners wanted this, but I'm really happy that Honda added it because it was one of my complaints when I first drove this car. I wanted to see them offer it as an option. Instead, they went ahead and made it as standard. Now, the one things that you're going to notice, or the few things you're going to notice that's different in this cabin is the steering wheel and the shifter. It's got a new shifter this year where they've replaced the knob with a unit that's about 19 grams or 9 grams lighter versus the previous pre-refreshed model. It's also it looks kind of like what you saw on the Type Rs back in the 90s. It's very much a throwback to the look. I really like the way the shifter looks and feels. It feels really good when you're shifting through the gears. Honda also says they kind of made some updates to the shift boot where they added this fake Alcantara on it. I think it's a huge improvement. In fact, the shifter itself, when I drove the 18 Type R that's next to me, I found that this new one just feels much more balanced and it just is easier to go through the gates. The steering wheel has the new Alcantara on here along with the buttons, and that's where I'm not really happy with that change, because this Alcantara looks great when it's new. It feels really good in your hands, but it's going to look like crap after a few years because the oils in your hands is going to basically smooth this out. It's going to look terrible. So I imagine a lot of owners who do have the 2020 model, you may want to put something on here or get a special Alcantara cleaner to keep this thing looking like it does right now. The rest of this cabin hasn't changed at all. You have the same look with the fake carbon fiber trim, the additional red accents. You have a soft touch dashboard material over here with this faux stitching over here. The steering wheel still adjusts for tilt and telescope, but the adjustment lever is all the way down here at the bottom of the column. The door panels are also soft touch. You have one touch up and down for both of the front windows, but not for the rear windows. And really, the Civic Type R's cabin is very open, it's very airy. The one thing about this car though is it feels big. When you drive this car compared to like a Golf R or a Veloster N, the Type R almost feels like you're sitting in a minivan because it's very wide. It's got this massive hood, big fenders, nice sized side mirrors, but one thing it is missing, Honda still hasn't thrown in blind spot monitoring into this car. It's because the Civic does not offer that on any trim level, so they don't even offer the blind spot monitoring, which would be nice. When you put the car into reverse, you can see it gives you a backup camera. It's just a very rudimentary standard backup camera with 3 different views. It's got trajectory, but no 360 camera or parking sensors. This infotainment system is another area where I wish Honda had made some changes and put the Accord's new infotainment system in here, because it's perfectly fine. It's a 7-inch touchscreen display. It includes things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, of course, which is nice. But at 7 inches, it's starting to look a little bit small. I think Honda could have easily gone to like an 8-inch display, and there are times where I find the system to be incredibly laggy. I just don't like how, right there you can see it takes a few seconds for it to come up. Going into your settings over here, you can see there's just a noticeable delay that will really start to frustrate you, especially if you own this car. I remember one of the earlier ones, some of those would really be slow. It looks like it's gotten a little bit better over the years, but I just wish that Honda had put the newer Accord system in here versus, this current generation model. Now over here on the shifter, you can see there's still the Type R plaque. This one here is number 36,073. This actually has to do with the total global production. So Honda has sold over 13,000 here in America, but they've built over 36,000 of these Type Rs. You still have this sliding and adjusting armrest here. Good amount of storage with your cup holders. You've got 2 USB ports, one down here as well, which is nice. And then your drive mode selector is right here. You still have a choice between Comfort, Sport is the car's normal setting, and then there's Plus R, which is the most aggressive setting. And we'll try all the drive modes later on in the driving scene. Now, the one thing that Honda mentioned, this car now has their active sound control, so ACS, and the active sound control basically enhances the noise of the engine through the car's speakers. And the one thing, you can't turn that off, at least not by itself. It's linked to the drive mode, so when it's in comfort setting, Honda says that the ACS will be at its least aggressive sound. As you go up into Sport and R+, it gets progressively louder. So we'll talk about the differences later on in the driving scene. The glove compartment, as you can see, falls, and it's also a fairly good size, but it's not lined with felt. And it's not damp. So overall, the cabin hasn't changed much. The one thing that I wish Honda did change, of course, was the 7-inch touchscreen. But other than that, the seats are very comfortable. And these are the Type R exclusive seats with the red buckets. And this is the only color that you can get. So if you don't like red, you may want to consider looking at another car. Another thing they also don't offer still is a sunroof. I would have liked to see them offer a sunroof, but this is supposed to be a race car, and Honda says that it would basically just add some unsprung weight to the roof of the vehicle. Just like the Civic hatchback, the Type R has a fairly usable back seat. Honda says you get around 36 inches of legroom back here, which is pretty usable, but unlike the regular Civic, there is no center seat here. So the Type R is technically a 4-seater, not a 5-seater, which is fine because the center seat here is probably not going to be super comfortable. But I wish that Honda had included the same fabric suede material that they include on the front seats and the back seats. It just looks a little bit cheap for me how they use a different cloth material, and I wish that Honda would also include a fold-down armrest here to make the back seat passengers a little bit more comfortable. You still have cup holders here and a little bit of storage, and the materials are all hard touch plastic back here. So it is a very usable back seat, but just know that you can easily see some of the cost cutting that went into place here. It reminds you that it's a Civic when you look at the back seat. Now, this is still a front wheel drive car, and one of the things that surprised me is the fact that it had no torque steer when I first drove this thing. Let's see if that's still the case. So there's not very much torque steer, as you guys saw. I didn't even have my hands on the wheel, which is gutsy. I don't typically do that for a front-wheel drive performance car with this much power. But there is a little bit of wheel spin, but it's not horribly, you know, bouncy. Like, I've driven some front-wheel drive cars with so much power, literally the front end will hop so much that everything kind of shakes the car violently. And the Type R is a very minuscule amount of wheel spin and torque steer, or actually very little torque steer, just a little bit of wheel hop. The limited slip diff is really doing all it can to put the power down. And really only from a dead stop when you do a 3,500 RPM clutch dump, you're gonna notice that. But I mean, overall, this thing still impresses me, even 3 years on the market later. So much power, so much pull, and the noise now. You can hear that enhancing active sound control. It basically sounds like the car has an intake on it already from the factory. It's so much pull. This feels like way more than 306 horsepower. And with a simple tune, you can easily push this thing over 350. So much power, unbelievable, so much grip, so much steering. It feels like I'm driving a car that's on rails. It's just so good, so planted. The summer tires on 20-inch wheels just grip the road like crazy, although I do wish that Honda offered this thing with a different tire. The Continental tires are fine, but I would love to see them offer a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S or a Cup 2 tire. Some of its competitors are starting to offer stuff like that. But this car also has retuned shocks, and the adaptive damping system now can react to road conditions up to 10 times quicker. So when you're adjusting between the drive modes, it will sense that. It'll sense the road imperfections and just make adjustments much faster, which results in better handling, better ride comfort. And this thing, even in Plus R, I mean, I am on smooth pavement here, but it still has a really, really controlled ride. This actually rides better than that BMW X3M that I had a couple weeks ago, which is confusing to me because this thing has these really skinny 20-inch wheels with very narrow sidewalls. So the fact that this thing rides so good is impressive to me. The other thing that Honda also improved are the brakes this year. They are now a 2-piece rotor design, and they dissipate heat better. They're a little bit larger. They've been slightly redesigned to also give you better braking power, so more bite up to 17% quicker when you first hit the brake pedal, and the brake pedal has a very reassuring feel. So I'm gonna actually try the brakes out. There's nobody behind me. We'll stop really suddenly. Oh, God, okay. But just attacking your favorite road here, look at this thing. It just grips like crazy. And there's even a little rev limiter in here that sounds a little bit of an audible alert to let you know that you're approaching the red line on this thing, because this engine revs so quickly to its 7,000 RPM peak that you don't notice it at times, and you wish that it had another 1,000 RPM of revs here. And the rev matching function is still perfect. You can turn it off if you don't like it, of course. Now let's talk about the new shifter, because I have unfortunately crunched the gears a couple of times in this new shifter. I love the way the shifter feels with this new knob. The new shift boot on it also feels good. It has that slick shifting gait, but what I am noticing, it doesn't like to be hurried from first to second. If you don't push the clutch in all the way, you can easily crunch the gear or miss the gear. Maybe it's just because I don't drive a Type R all the time. I've read in forums that owners of the first of the 17 Type Rs were experiencing that same issue. Or I could just be super novice at driving stick because I don't daily drive a stick anymore. So that's the one beauty thing about the Type R, is you have to drive this in a manual. It only comes with a manual. But man, are you super rewarded. I mean, this car puts a huge smile on my face. It still will get to 60 in around the mid 5-second range. And if you get the launch right, it'll do it in under 5 seconds. I've seen it as quick as 4.9. And even though the exhaust still sounds boring in this thing, I have to say I do like the active sound control. Now, first of all, I'm gonna switch it over to comfort so you guys can hear the difference when it's in its quieter setting. So we will go to second here, floor it. You can hear it sounds like a vacuum cleaner there. We'll go back into R+. Same gears. Second gear pull to third. Oh yeah. It's a fake noise, but as long as it sounds good, I'm okay with a fake noise like that. Wow, what a hot hatch. Very much still puts a smile on your face, and Honda kind of reminds you don't necessarily need all-wheel drive. I mean, yes, the Golf R and the STI offer all-wheel drive, which is fantastic for those high RPM clutch dumps, which this car obviously can't manage because it can't put the power down. But it is lighter because it's front-wheel drive. It has that amazing limited slip diff with that dual-axis front suspension. It rides really well. I mean, this is right in between the ride quality of an STI and a Golf R. A little bit firmer than a Golf R, but not overly harsh. The seats are still amazingly comfortable. I mean, there's one thing about the Type R that I wish that Honda did address, is the garbage infotainment system, which is still slow and laggy. When I had my phone plugged in, I find that it overheats my phone, causes my phone to crash. I have an iPhone 10, so it is an older phone. And then I try to turn on the Waze. It actually will put the audio system, the stereo, in like a mute setting or like a half 50% setting, and I can't seem to get it out of that for some reason. So still problems with the 7-inch display audio system. I wish Honda would get rid of that. The factory 12-speaker premium sound system is fine, although I wish that Honda would start implementing a premium audio system, because even yes, the Type R sounds better this year, but it's still not amazing sounding like like the old Focus RS or the Hyundai Veloster N sounds. And a sunroof would be nice if they offered that, and heated seats. They don't offer heated seats in this thing, whereas the Civic Si has heated seats, so I just don't understand. Just because we can. But yeah, the Type R does not want for more power. It does want for a more grip when you're just starting aggressively from a stop, but once you get going, it has so much pull. It feels light. It feels so planted. It corners like it's on rails. And what's new this year as well is that Honda sensing system. Now, it is very strange to see a Type R with the sensing buttons here on the steering wheel. You've got the active lane keep assist. It's got adaptive cruise control. So the adaptive cruise control will actually, so let's actually turn it on here so I can show you. We'll turn on the adaptive cruise. And let's say I want to go, I'm in 4th gear right now. Let's raise the speed up a bit. You can adjust the distance. And let's say I want to shift down to third gear to pass. The adaptive cruise control will still continue to maintain, its acceleration pressure, but once I basically put the clutch in, it will resume as soon as I let the clutch back out. So that's a very nice feature. Let's see here if it'll come to a complete stop, because that's what I was wondering about. We're coming up on the stop sign here. There's a F-150 in front of me. So it actually does not. It says canceled and it says too low. So this does not have the full speed range adaptive cruise control, which is okay. I kind of expected that considering this is a manual transmission. I was wondering how it would work with a manual. And you saw it beep at me and give me the brake flashlight. So I'm sure those of you who have the old Type R are super confused to be seeing that technology in this car. The one thing that it is frustratingly missing is blind spot monitoring with your cross traffic alert, and Honda's lane watch didn't make it into this car. As you see, as I signal right, there is no lane watch camera here. Ooh, you can easily chirp second. But what a car. What an amazing machine. And it's still the perfect daily driver with all this space in the back seat and the trunk. You still feel like you're driving something super special. And what other cars make you feel like you're a kid again? I feel like I'm in high school all over again because everybody stares at you in this thing. The other big problem is everyone wants to race you in it. So if you like attention, the Type R may not be your ride. Or if you don't like attention, it may not be your ride. So when I first drove the Civic Type R about 3 years ago, 3 things really impressed me. Its potent acceleration, its go-kart-like handling, and the fact that we had a front-wheel drive hot hatch with over 300 horsepower that didn't have any torque steer or wheel hop. That just blew my mind back then, so I was really impressed with that. Now, of course, 3 years later, how does the 2020 Civic Type R stack up? Now, Honda obviously made very little changes to that vehicle, and they didn't really need to because the look of this thing didn't really need a change. In fact, some people still don't like the way these cars look. Personally, for me, I think it actually suits the character of the cars. I mean, the 2017 model here, the 2018 model there, and then you have the 2020 model with the very subtle changes to the bumper, the upgraded brakes, the upgraded cooling, and that new addition of the active sound control, because I think that was probably the best change that Honda did. One of my biggest complaints on the 2017 through 2019 model was the weak sound, and they still have a very weak sounding exhaust, but now with that active sound control, it has a deeper, much more aggressive tone to it that doesn't sound incredibly fake. So I think a lot of owners are going to appreciate that new addition. I wish Honda had added a sunroof. I wish they had improved the infotainment system, but I really like the new shifter. So really, when you look at the hot hatch segment as a whole, Honda said they sold over 13,000 of these in the last 3 years. They're going to continue to sell as many as they can build. And the beauty about the Type R is if you were looking to buy one of these cars today, you're still going to be paying close to sticker, if not over sticker on these things. In fact, over the last 3 years, that 2017 model was around $35,000. This one here now stickers for $37,990. So they've increased the price by about $2,000 over the last 3 years, which I think is fair because if you look at the competition, the Golf R, the Subaru STI, those are over $40,000 easily for a fully loaded model. Now granted, I would probably assume that the other manufacturers are discounting those cars slightly, whereas Honda is still charging every penny of MSRP for this thing because it's a really good deal. The Hyundai Veloster N is kind of the oddity because it's about $7,000 less, but I would argue that the Type R is in a different league, and it continues to feel that way, which is why the Type R is still, in my book, the king of hot hatches, at least until a new Volkswagen Golf R comes out next year and whenever Subaru decides to come out with the next generation STI. But with all that said, I hope you have enjoyed my full overview on the 2020 Civic Type R. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.